We obviously know that oversight of our federal budget is very important, and it's certainly important that that part of that oversight is federal aid as well. Foreign aid. Foreign aid we know is about 1% of the federal budget, comparable to defense spending, which is about 12% of the budget. That 1% makes an incredible impact across the world. Certainly, and not just obviously in some of the conflict zones that are where foreign aid oftentimes is really critical, but also in building our relationships with our allies, but also strengthening our position across the globe. We know that as we speak, foreign aid is also critical in some of our conflict zones, and unfortunately, my friends in the majority right now are currently blocking about $60 billion of support to Ukraine in our fight against Russia. This is aid that is absolutely crucial to help the Ukrainian people defend themselves. Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom and democracy against Vladimir Putin, a war criminal who has attacked America's democracy as well. And here are some facts. Our government has more than 400 people working to oversee foreign aid. The inspectors general from the Defense Department, State Department, the U.S. Agency for International Development, all work with 20 other federal agencies and the Ukrainian government. There is deep oversight with how we spend our support and our tax dollars from here at home. I also want to make sure that I ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record this list of more than 145 completed, ongoing, and planned oversight reports and investigations from the Special Inspector General for Operation Atlantic Resolve.
Without objection.
Thank you. The Ukrainians themselves are fighting for their existence. They want and need our aid to make the biggest possible impact as well. Now, Transparency International's 2023 report on international corruption reported that Ukraine has made significant progress taking on corruption even during the challenges of war. Now, wartime Ukraine climbed 12 places in the 2023 edition of this annual survey. Now, the report found, and I want to quote, that Ukraine's growth by 3 points is one of the best results over the past year in the entire world, end quote. Now, we know there are challenges, and certainly a lot of folks like to point out where there's areas that we can improve. And conducting oversight in a war zone is hard when we can't access, of course, the front line. But this foreign aid is critical, especially at this moment. Now, at the outset of the conflict, U.S. personnel in Ukraine had to be evacuated. We all know this. Over the course of the next 6 months, U.S. agencies worked diligently to establish logistic hubs in partner nations to oversee the transfer of aid and equipment. It's important to note that up until this conflict, end-use monitoring of defense articles had only been executed in a peacetime environment, which meant the U.S. government could conduct site visits and have greater access. Now, our agencies conducting oversight of aid to Ukraine had to develop entirely new procedures for conducting this work in a hostile environment. Now, my friends in the majority like to, of course, also talk about issues around the border. And we, of course, haven't had a single hearing on push factors that drive people to migrate. But we know that foreign aid and additional foreign aid would also have a huge impact on what is happening along the border, and certainly to help the people of Mexico, Central America, and South America. We should have a hearing that examines the root causes of our global problems and work to remediate those. Now, our humanitarian aid fights, we know that our humanitarian aid fights displacement by addressing these root causes. Poverty and climate change, we know, are also huge factors. And when we look at migration that's happening, for example, in Guatemala or Honduras, there are huge challenges that could also be addressed with support from the United States and the world as it relates to human aid. The humanitarian crisis in Venezuela has been an enormous driver of folks coming to the border. We used to have thousands of folks from Venezuela come to the border, and now we've had, in some years, hundreds of thousands of folks from Venezuela coming to the border. We know that in countries where criminal gangs may control the police or the government, our U.S. assistance is vital to also fight corruption and insecurity. In Guatemala, for instance, we funded a UN commission of independent prosecutors that help prosecute, take on military death squads, take on rogue police officers, drug cartels, and even 2 presidents. That commission helped cut homicides, by the way, by 32%, dismantle 60 criminal networks, and catalyze the indictment of 680 bad actors across the country. President Biden has fought to strengthen that commission even when he was vice president. So there's a lot of work that we can do around human aid. I want to ask also for unanimous consent to introduce this report from the Washington Office of Latin America called When the Dominoes Fall, Corruption of the Justice System in Guatemala, into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. So just like in Ukraine, there are attacks by some on foreign aid that has harmed innocent people, weakened American values, and harmed our national interests. Foreign aid is critical in our success as a country and in our national security interests as well. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.